I encourage everyone to take a moment and breathe and take a tea cheers with Ajiri tea. Ajiri tea recognizes the beauty in shared stories and shared opportunities. Ajiri sources award-winning tea from Kenya, employs women in the region to handcraft the labels, and sends 100% of the profits back to the region to support orphan education. Save 10% on your order of Kenyan teas and coffee with the code BeautifullyHuman at ajiritea.com. AJIRIT.com. Tea mugs up. Hello and welcome to the Beautifully Human podcast. I'm Nick Sheesby. In this podcast, I speak with beautiful humans from all around the world, sharing with you their incredible stories, revealing the power in every human story, to spread love and humanity to a world that is in desperate need of it, to show that we can all connect in beautiful ways, no matter where we come from or what we look like. What you will find out is that we are all beautifully human. Let's all be beautifully human. All right, welcome back to another episode of the Beautifully Human podcast. Today I am hanging out with Nicholas Strand, and his story is so powerful and so incredible, and he is just such a powerful and strong and beautiful human, dealing with everything he has dealt with in his life, from very personal and to his family. I'll let him tell you all about it. If you enjoy this podcast, follow along on Instagram and on Spotify at the Beautifully Human podcast. Rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. It helps get these stories out to more people. And as always, enjoy this conversation. All right, dude. So I'd love to start these off with a very broad and open-ended, overarching question and let you take it and control the narrative of where we head to and say, tell me the story of your life, Nick.
All right. It started out kind of as a young kid. I was in, I loved music. I was always watching, people like Garth Brooks. He had a huge stage and it was like, crazy. I knew I wanted to do something like that. I definitely couldn't perform. So I, trying to find what I could do. I had toys and such that, were guitars, and I never could find it or find the patience. But what triggered it was when I connected the dots with my dad being an electrician. And that's when I finally figured out how to, make the magic. And so started to DJ and do all these different things. And as things grew, production grew. And eventually I got into the production in college, where I worked with the Future Farmers of America and the state FFA. And in this process is where I also met my wife. So in 2007, we met, but it kind of was the beginning of this really big synergy that I didn't even realize was forming. We all live a life that, we've got goals and such in mind. And, here I am going through college to become a roadie and travel and tour. And lo and behold, I meet this, amazing woman who becomes my wife. But even more so has created this huge mission. And so my story kind of begins and the struggle kind of begins in 2012 when I lose my mom to cancer. And then in 2017, I lose Brianna, my wife of 10 years, to cystic fibrosis. As you can imagine, this is difficult, trying to figure out how to, you have this great life that you're living and you've made all these goals, but then all of a sudden the most important people in your life or most influential start to disappear. So there was about good few years after Brianna passed that I struggled through things. I was thankful to have roadie family and be on the road and have my job. It was about the only thing intact. And in 2019, I wake up, left side of my face is paralyzed. I thought it was a stroke. But but they call it Bell palsy, and luckily it's all back. But it was kind of a wake up moment for me to realize that, if the left side of my face could just go paralyzed, then your brain, your lungs, your heart, with no explanation whatsoever, it could just go. And if my mom wasn't enough, or Brianna wasn't enough, apparently I had to learn, firsthand, how life is so short and fragile. So if not now, then when? I went into it and I started writing. And I started writing the book, Loving Someone Who's Dying. The book talks about Brianna and I going through this journey, learning about Brianna and her fight with cystic fibrosis, and how to have a relationship in such a difficult journey. And as I'm writing, all of a sudden I look down to the inner arm, and I have a tattoo. And one of the beautiful things about Brianna is not only was she a huge advocate for cystic fibrosis, but she was also a great leader, a great spokesman. She was a superhero, if you will. And one thing she noticed when my mom passed is a little bit of the memory kind of started to fade. The present started to go, and she didn't like that. And one of the big things she would do is she would create quotes, and take quotes from people and put them on the fridge, as a way to inspire her daily activities and get through the challenges she was facing. So she was clever enough to create the quote, "Choose your attitude, create your life."
Yeah.
And what's beautiful is as I was writing and typing, I remember looking down, and that tattoo that's on my inner forearm is her own handwriting. "Choose your attitude, create your life." And it was my aha moment. It was that moment that I realized, after all this pain, all this darkness, struggling to get by, I had finally realized what "choose your attitude, create your life" meant. I didn't do anything different except for change my approach, change my action. The scenario was still the same. My mom and Brianna didn't come back. They're still gone. But I was doing something positive with it. I was doing something healthy. I was processing, I was going through, I was sharing it with other people. And that energy started to build as it inspired people, which then inspired me. And all of a sudden I felt this life that was just creating out of this darkness that I had struggled. So as you can imagine, I just, kept going with it. As a way to kind of shed this light with people. Death is so heavy. So I knew Loving Someone Who's Dying was going to be a tough book, or a tough journey for people. So I needed a way to try to get more people in, because my goal in life is to show how beautiful these things are when we can talk about it, or to live a journey like Brianna lived through her extreme struggle.
Yeah.
And so, both of us being in the roadie industry, one of the biggest things you were just talking about is merch. So I took the words "choose your attitude" and put it on the shirt, and I treated it respectfully to create kind of like, a brand feel. But long and behold, that became a whole lot bigger. And it was that welcome mat to bring people closer. And so all this life, I go from, on the road touring with lifelong dreams, to all of a sudden life change, and now inspired and motivated to share and inspire the world how to live, a prosperous, a full life in the struggles we face. Normalizing the most extreme things, from death, addiction, not in the fact of, obviously, that to do some of those things, but more in the fact that the struggle is real, and that we're all struggling, and we're all going through it, and how we can make the best of that. And so that's where I stand right now, kind of in, choose your attitude world. And that's the brand. And we've built a create your life side that helps people actually learn and apply themselves to those amazing lessons. And the goal is that, as it says, it creates a life for people where they can get out of the darkness, and we normalize people's lives, and we just make a better community. And so,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's so beautiful, dude. I remember when we got connected and we chatted for the first time. I walked away and I was just like, "Holy shit, man! This is really incredible." And I love even behind you where it says a premium encouragement brand. And I just think
Yes.
that's so beautiful that out of such darkness and sorrow and unthinkable situations in your life that your wife's words came through, and then now you've made it into this movement that you're pushing and promoting and helping people, because no matter what you do in life, you're going to come into those kind of situations. Like death comes when you don't, like you're never going to ask for it. It's always going to happen. Something that you don't plan for is going to happen. So to have as something as simple as just choose your attitude, and then having such a momentum behind that, and knowing how you want to present that and come at it with people is really amazing.
Thank you. It's amazing, and as amazing as it is for you, it's the same for me. Like I get the chills all the time, and when I share that story, you know, I feel, this tattoo raising hairs just because of, how powerful, that action is, the quote is. um and it's just, to normalize these things and to help society process some of these things, I think is huge. And not only that, it's helping me through it.
Yeah.
I we're all going through something, and being able to communicate these things, um, you know, we're able to lift those things up and help us process as we go through them. Um, but yeah, I appreciate it, because it's, if it wasn't for this project, I don't know where I would be, because it's one of those things of, like I said, I'm gaining from it just as much as I'm trying to share and help allow others to gain from it.
Yeah.
Um, so
Well, yeah, that's such a beautiful part of it that I've thought about ever since I first talked to you. It's just like you're actively going through what you're actively helping people through. So it's not as if you're out here saying nothing has happened, but here's what I outward looking in think will help you. It's like, dude, I'm in the midst of all of this. So whatever you're going through, like I am there with you. I feel it. And grief,
yes,
like you know how it goes. Like it is people's grief is their own. We're all individuals that handle and feel and take into our body and into our brains completely differently. So the fact that you're in there walking through it, through the trees of this grief, and just figuring it out for yourself as you're actively helping, like you said, I mean, it's helping you heal, to see other people healing, but also gives you that extra step into it, saying I'm in here, I'm learning from myself at the same time I'm learning from you.
yes, exactly. I mean, it's not saying that you want others to struggle or to be in that strife, but by all means, it's definitely more rewarding, and you learn a lot more by actively being in it. And I would have to say, not only actively being in it, but being actively vulnerable
Yeah.
to share what you're going through. That's the number one thing. We all got to struggle. We all got some sort of, addiction or connection that we maybe are not the proudest of. But the key is that connection of vulnerability to try to work to be better. And if we normalize the things that we all struggle at, you were saying earlier, about death. It's so weird because we are all gonna die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And yet, it's like the most forbidden thing to talk about.
Yeah.
But it's like the most important thing to talk about. And I say that not in a sense of like, oh well, you talk about it, then you're gonna die tomorrow. Well, what if?
Yeah.
And I learned that with Brianna. My mom, when she passed, we found out in a brain aneurysm. 6 months later, she's dead. And so it was kind of this race, and things weren't planned. And so we're a little unorganized. With Brianna, the death was beautiful. And I don't say that in the fact, of course, it's been tough. Of course, it was tough. Of course, the emotions are there and it's real. But what was beautiful is we already had those talks.
Yeah.
We already created plans. So as much as, it's difficult to talk about, it created for a better journey. Now, at the same time, you're going, okay, well, that's it if I die. Well, at the same time, your life value grows a lot stronger when you know that possibly tomorrow may not come.
Yeah.
And that if not now, then when? How many times do we push things aside because we're uncomfortable, because we're in fear, but we also believe that tomorrow is going to be here? So like one thing I share with people is, an hourglass of time, right? You've got sand in it. Well, most of us, the top is blocked off. You don't see how much sand is there. And so because of that, we just keep living. We only know what's on the bottom side. Everybody knows what's on the bottom side. That's our past. Well, all of a sudden, if you're someone like Brianna and you're told how long you have, now you see your hourglass.
Right.
Now you see the sand up top. So in a sense, you're kind of rushed to kind of create the best you can because your time is limited. But why don't we all live that way?
Right.
Why don't we all try to take advantage of what we have today? By all means, we're not going to do everything today.
Of course.
But it's the idea that always thinking that tomorrow is the day to do it, and that's kind of what this all comes to of those discussions, is it helps in those steps to be more motivated, to be more understanding, to try to create that legacy that you want to leave behind.
Yeah, man. I mean, I talk about it a lot because it is my journey, but
Yeah.
I mean, life came at me really quick. I mean, I was told one night I might not have a night left, and I was 33 years old. And, anybody listening, you can think you're invincible and you can think life is good. And I found a quote recently that I really like, and it said, "Imagining yourself in the future is a hopeful thought," which is really poignant because we literally have no idea what is coming, even at 3:22 when it turns that minute next minute. So it's like when I was told that, it was like instantly you have that funnel of what did I do in my life, what legacy do I leave, and it's not something that you think about. But now that I've moved forward and I'm moving towards my recovery and staying on this path, it's like, it's the best way to do it, is just like you said, if not now, when? Because like we have no idea, and just do the stuff you want to do, and like take the chances that you want to take, and the passions that you have, like go for it. And also, I mean, I see a lot of people waiting till they're older in life to start traveling or experiencing after they've done this.
Yeah.
And it's like you're closing in on it, because again, we all are, but like especially when you've made it up in age, it's like just go do it now and get busy with it, and like also with me, like you said, just talk about it. It's okay to talk about, like, it is going to happen. It's not fun. Nobody wants to talk about death, but like it's coming. So like live your life.
There's so many avenues that it helps you with. It helps you talk about difficult topics. It helps you learn more about yourself. And death is not the only subject here. There's addiction. If you've got addiction, if you've got depression, if you've got all the talks that are difficult to talk about, is parallel with this. I think one of the key things is learning who you are, learning to embrace your past, learning to, understand your emotions, and all those pieces help you do that. A lot of the reasons we get rid of the talks of death is because of fear. Well, fear is one of the most, encouraging things to overcome or to become fearless, because um, a lot of our holdback is because of fear. So all of a sudden, if you start talking about death and you start doing these things and you learn more about yourself and you become more fearless, all of a sudden you're reaching goals that you didn't even think that you could reach, because what you were scared of before, that was almost like a wall, is no longer present, and you're walking right through it.
Yeah.
So, it's amazing. It I kind of say sometimes too, it's kind of like sports, life life is just like a sport, in the sense that, you should be thinking about, the things that maybe you haven't done well, and things that you want to do better, or things that you want to do in the future, because that's all you do in sports. So when you go to practice, all you're practicing is the things that you're bad at.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson playing football, he's not going to go to practice going, I know that I'm good at this, so let's just keep doing this.
Yeah, let's focus on that.
Yeah. No, you look at the things that you've challenged about. You put yourself in the worst case scenarios, which would, not death in sports, but like, you're going to lose. So what can we do to work our brains up so that way we become more powerful, we become more immortal? Obviously we're never immortal, but you get to a spot to where you can actually start being a better you.
Yeah.
And get deeper with your emotions, which then allows you to connect better with those around you. And then when these life struggles occur, you're not awestruck. You're able to process them and go through them, help yourself and help others.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know that you had a, the struggle you've been through, even that is like, almost a blessing. I would call those things a blessing. Like I feel like, as much as I would never want my wife or my mom to pass, like it's been a blessing to go through these struggles and to overcome them because of the lessons I've learned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when they were when it was fresh and everything, like with your mom and with your wife, like what were your practical steps, like when you first felt the grief and all that? Like where did you find your empowerment and your strength? Like what was that like? Because those are, like you said, those are massive pillars in life, your wife and your mom.
The strength didn't come until I crashed. Like I had a few moments where I've never been so dark in my life. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know how. A friend asked me the other day, a little simpler to this, like, what were you doing until you had that aha moment? And I was like, I was trying to live.
Yeah.
We don't realize how close we become to things that have been in our lives for that long. First off my mom, and then 10 years of my wife, the two most close people in my life, you rip those away and all of a sudden it's like taking the training wheels off and you're like, well, wait a minute.
Right.
I wasn't ready to ride my bike or even more, car, it needs four wheels, and all of a sudden you take two of them out. Like, wait a minute.
Right.
Yeah. So it was like, I literally was learning how to be me again. And then, like I said, when I found that quote, I realized I didn't have to be anything but me, that it was all right there. And it was just the way I was thinking. It was the way I was, addressing the situation, and everything was still there. And so that was kind of that moment of learning that it was just a mindset. It was literally a different, as simple as the glass is half full or half empty. Like, it sounds so like cliche, but it was. And so, yeah, just trying to figure out how to, enjoy those things. And as soon as you found it, though, as soon as I found it, it just everything's come natural, where it just um and it was all there. It was always something I always did. But I guess it's kind of like, you got a band-aid, and when you rip the band-aid off, all of a sudden there's that pain for a bit, and then it just kind of feels like the pain goes away. Well, that's just you learning to get used to it, as opposed to the pain going away.
Yeah.
And so, same idea. Yeah, just kind of.
Yeah. I mean, it's really truly amazing when you go through something like you went through, or like I went through, or fill in your descriptor of the pain and suffering and the sorrow you're going through in your life. And when you look at it and you go, like you just said, you rip that band-aid off, and it's like it's not going away, but you learn to live with it, and you find that self-love, that self-empowerment, and it's really incredible. I mean, I know for me, that night in the hospital, when I was looking down and looking at my life, and I came to a realization that I was actually proud of the life that I had lived. That was a big step. And then also before that, I didn't know if I gave a shit if I lived or died. But then when I came to that moment where I could have easily just pieced out, I gave a fuck, and I moved forward, and I found that self-empowerment as I moved forward. And then I had people along the way, but like, it was really amazing when I invested in myself and
Ooh.
and put that out there. And I was like, okay, yes, there is going to be help. There are going to be people that are going to be there for me. But if I don't be there for myself, if I don't pull myself up right now, nobody can do it for me. And
Yeah.
I'm the one that has this body that I have ruined at this point, this liver that I've ruined. Like, if I don't pull myself up, I'm not moving forward, no matter who's there to say motivational things or say these beautiful words and empowerment, and like have a Braveheart chat moment, where it's not going to help if I don't find that love. So I think that's so amazing that you found that in yourself, because that is such a beautiful part of it, where yes, there are people that are going to come in and give you that strength too, but like, you have to get that for yourself.
I think one of the most common things I've found with people, as I've talked to a lot, and I know you've talked to a lot, is that those who have found happiness and where they stand, and I say that very specifically because happiness to me is not a happy sad, like a smiley face happy. Happy to me is comfortable where you stand. So if you're in a very difficult spot, being comfortable where you stand, and a lot of that comes, or one could call it emotional intelligence in a sense. But almost every single person that is aware of that and feels that comfort are people who have taken their past and remain to keep it open and to share the past as a victory,
Yeah.
instead of being a victim of their past. And that's one of the biggest things I have found from others, especially talking to others. And it could be anything extreme, anything from your past, failures, whatever. But those who actually feel comfortable where they stand and actually are truly happy at the core of their heart, I have found to be able to take everything that they have from their past and be and not be afraid, of that. And that just goes to show you that no matter what you've done in your past or how bad it is the light and the empowerment of who you are. And, yes, there's things that we've done that I'm sure, we're all frustrated with,
Right.
but to create a lesson from it and to learn off of it and build yourself a better person, that's how you become a better person for yourself. And that's, it's beautiful. That, and in fact, that's kind of where the logo, kind of comes in. Is it kind of has a butterfly. There's two hearts. One on the left is your past. The one on the right is your future, lifting up your past, and a butterfly effect. And you are in control of your forward motion. But then the other piece is that a butterfly has to fly with both wings.
Yeah.
So your past and your future. Whoa.
Yeah, I remember when you told me about that, and I think that's it's so beautiful because it is so true. Like, also goes into how I came up with the Beautifully Human podcast.
Yes.
Just the name of it is what makes you beautifully human isn't anything outwardly. It is your failures, your fuck ups, your triumphs, your best, your worst, your ugliest, your every part of it. Every part of it is what makes you that beautiful human. And like you said, you don't have to hold on to your past, but like it's there. So you have to be okay with what you've done because we're all going to make mistakes. That's just going to
There,
happen.
there's only one you, and it's only a unique you, and the only reason is because you have lived your perspective. You have gone through all your unique pieces of DNA through your life. So no matter how much we want to stand here right now and say we're in the common space, our triggers are completely different because I I'm 34 years old or whatever. I've had 34 years of experience that you have not had, vice versa.
Yeah.
And so, but you know, those experiences, some of us has shared the same experiences.
Yeah.
However, because of that raising and all those different things we've gone through, we have different triggers. We have different, so it's a unique base that makes you who you are.
Yeah.
So, it's, yeah.
Yeah, and what I just circle it right all the way back to the start is it's really beautiful when somebody gets to the point where we've been talking about. You get to that self-empowerment, you get to that real self-love, and you get to be,
Yes.
and I loved how you explained it as happy. I think that is such a beautiful way to say it. I'm not even going to try to replicate it because your
Thanks.
words were perfect. It's really beautiful because at that point when you're feeling that, it's infectious and people want to come because like you said, you've had 34 years of life. I've had 36 years of life, and we've had different types of griefs and similar types, I'm sure. And then when we can come together and I'm hurting and then I can call on you and say, "Yo dude, like this is what's going on." And then you're feeling really good in that moment and putting yourself there to help people as you're helping yourself. It's such a good just breeding ground for such beauty
Yes.
in life, and I think it's so important what you're doing.
Thank you. It's one of those things of, to be able to share how you feel with somebody else and then them be able to share how they feel and feel comfortable in that, I think is an extreme beauty in the fact that it's a cohesiveness of community. That it's not a bad thing to say you had a bad day. We usually like to hide what's not normal, but for some reason suppress what's really normal. And those things that are normal are the things we need to talk about, but yet are the things that cause all this mental harm because we feel confused. Makeup or looking good or all these different things, when really at the end of the day, how you feel, your emotions, men have a hard time crying when that's like one of the most important emotions, to express.
Yeah.
So, and it's okay because it's real
Right.
and it's real uncomfortable,
Yeah.
but it's real. And that's why it feels uncomfortable, is because it's been suppressed, and so that's one thing I try to do is try to live through those emotions and feel the emotions, so that way as those triggers kind of hit, you're kind of you start to learn earlier in the process where you're headed or what you're doing or how to handle yourself. And
Yeah.
um yeah it definitely feels good to have others that understand the grind,
Yeah.
and normalizes what's normal,
Yeah.
as opposed to always having the discussions with people who have yet to be open with themselves, let alone with others. And so how can you have a full relationship when you don't even know yourself?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah.
Yeah, and I think you hit it too with your brief point about how men struggle to cry, and I think two men having a kind of conversation like we're having right now, or even deeper, it's so ingrained in men to just be like, I can do this, I can power through it, I got this, whatever it is, and like beat your chest. And it's like, you know what's going to get you through it quicker is if you just have a good cry and you talk it out
Yeah.
and you get a big nice hug and like deal with those emotions. And I know like where I was growing up, and I mean I'm still dealing with it to this day, like mental health just is not something that is spoken about. It's like you send it up
Yeah.
in your prayers and it will get taken care of. It's not when you bring up like a dark mental space, it's like you've just said something in Mandarin Chinese and they have no idea what you're speaking about. And it's like, it's really good, like you say, to normalize the normal. Like, mental health is real, it is a struggle, depression is real, addiction is real, and all these things happen all the time to most people. Like,
Yeah.
even like everyone gets sad. You feel emotion. That's part of depression. That's part of growing. That's part of grieving. That's part of all of it. And like it is so normal. And yet it gets put out to be just this weird thing out there.
What makes it tough too is the more you know about yourself and the more you kind of talk to others, it helps you become a better listener.
Mm-hmm.
Still a struggle by all means that I'm still trying to figure out, but um, it's crazy. You share how you feel with somebody, and the help that you're seeking is more of a just a stable foundation to be able to share how you feel, not necessarily need a response, but more so somebody to help you process by yourself, but to have a human to kind of be there to kind of help guide you. And often that's needed in a just somebody who can just listen. I
Yeah.
hear you. You're definitely going through a lot. I'm here for you. I get that. But it's weird because those that don't understand, or those our society is kind of created in to feel like we're in a competition. So if I share my reality with you, today was a shitty day. Well, then usually the response back is, yeah, well, my day was shitty too. So theoretically, we can't talk about this because, you know, if your day was shitty, mine was shitty as well. But by you saying your day was shitty, then you must be saying that my day wasn't shitty. When it's like, no, no, no. What we're saying is that you both had a shitty day, and that we can all share our experiences and
Yeah.
not be in a competition because again, we're not on the same train track.
Right. Right. Yeah.
you know so if anything, it's saying, hey, you're okay going through a shitty situation, you're okay going through a shitty situation. Maybe us talking about it, we can help each other by listening and understanding, and it might help each other with some points to make each other better.
Yeah.
And I found that as well as listening. um Sometimes we like to break up the silence or not listen completely because we feel like we are being offended or that feeling's taken away, when we're just sharing, we're cohesively creating that community.
Yeah.
um
Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people can learn as well, is conversation can be a one-way street, and your part of a conversation can be the one that listens to someone else
yes,
talk. That is a very big active part of a conversation, and it's a beautiful
yes,
part. It's most of the time the more powerful part of the conversation is not saying anything and just listening. And it's really beautiful to offer that to somebody in their time, and not compare, not contrast, or just sit and say, I'm here, I'm going to
yeah.
listen to you.
Listen to understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. It's
It's
it's an amazingly powerful gift. I mean, even just on this where I say, tell me the story of your life, and I get to listen, and the less I talk, the better, I think. But it's really, really beautiful to see people light up when they have no idea that question's coming, and I'm just like, tell me the story. And it's really nice to be able to just share and have an
Yeah.
active ear that is going to listen to what you're talking about.
It's crazy. I have a podcast as well, Choose Your Attitude podcast, and one of them, I interview a guy by the name of Kevin Berthia. He was a guy that was going to jump off the Golden Gate Bridge, and I interviewed. It's a 3-part series. I interviewed him, the police officer, and then I had them both together, and we had some really great talks.
Wow.
But what was beautiful is, I asked Kevin, okay, share your story. Well, 2005 is when he stood on that edge of the bridge, and it's now 2021. We sat for an hour and a half. I didn't say a word, and he shared that thing like it happened yesterday. And what's amazing is one of the biggest things he shared, or kind of the things around it, was perspective and listening. And it just goes to show you, so many different things of, here he was 20 years old, about ready to jump off the bridge, and people are looking at that one moment as what they're judging, yet nobody looks at the 20 years that have come up to that, to bring that to that breaking point.
Yeah.
Or the fact that he got to that point because nobody would listen. Nobody was actually truly listening. Everybody had their solution or pushed him away because he wasn't good enough, or however it was. And so just to hear that and to see that, the power behind it, like you said, listening is tough. You get to a point when silence hits. I do it myself. It's like, okay, fill in the silence. We got to fill in this.
Sure.
Silence is a language in that aspect where, you let that process, but people need to do that. And all these aspects are the reason why we don't allow those things is, again, fear. We're in fear of the emotions that we feel when we're in those situations. But the more you understand, or the more you put yourself in understanding those areas that are normal, you're able to stand there a lot better and be. And it was funny because I asked the police officer, here you are as a, suicide prevention, and, you lived your whole life to try to save people's lives. And I asked him, I said, where's your story? And I knew it was going to be heavy. And sure enough, there's about 3 or 4 things that he impacted that were just like, okay. Wow. Why? Because he gone through it. He has learned to become comfortable in the uncomfortable. His past, he was able to unpack. And so all of a sudden, the power of all these people I've seen come from that beauty of taking your past and being able to just always keep it open, always keep it there, and always be actively working on it, as opposed to, pushing it off to the side and under the bed as a monster that you try to ignore. It's just, it's amazing, the simplicity. I mean, by all means, it's difficult. I still struggled through it myself. But it is beautiful and powerful to see the simplicity of the action needed for such extreme, results. Yeah.
Wow. Holy hell, dude. I got to go listen to that 3-part series. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I can't think of anything more powerful than a story like that. I mean, and like you said, when you asked the police officer's story, it's like you knew what was coming, and like, wow, to be able to stand in that and then be there for people in those kind of moments. I mean, that is just somebody that has realized their power and working through it and using it to empower other people. It's incredible.
what's amazing about it, and I would connect this to another podcast I have. The first podcast I did was with a friend of mine. She lost her leg in a rock climbing accident. And I asked her, I said, how does it feel to be held up as a hero for just surviving? Like, she's just trying to walk because she lost a leg.
Yeah.
Yet everybody's like, oh, how heroic. She's like, I just want to walk again.
Yeah.
And what she said in her response was beautiful. It was, well, people can see my struggle. So they hold me up a little bit higher than everybody else. However, everybody else is going through a struggle as well, whether it's an addiction, financial, relationship, but it's the struggle that's within their brain and what they're focused on. And so it's just as parallel as the struggle she's dealing with. So that kind of gave me a understanding of, oh, wow, like you make a good point that, you know, one has one extreme struggle, but the other has something a little bit less, but there's still what's in your brain or what you're focused on and your challenge at the moment, which in the end is level and adequate. Um, and so to think of that, just kind of put a new perspective in the idea that, you know, every challenge is literally in a sense the same type of challenge. You know, the one is not extreme over the other. It's just trying to get through that brain dump, you know,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
um, and once I figured that out, all of a sudden it was like, oh, well, this is a little bit easier to unpack these challenges when you go through them.
Yeah.
So, you know, yeah, it's mind boggling to, it intrigues me to have these talks and to be able to, to go through that. And I'm always computing and trying to challenge myself to, better understand these or, learn different connections that other people have made.
Yeah.
But, some of these extreme challenges like that, that suicide attempt, it was the first podcast that I cried. I've been able to hold it for almost all of them except for that one. Like I really teared up.
Yeah.
But it was also, it's great to be it's great to be able to have those moments, to be able to fall into that listening position, to be able to, hear others and what they're going through, because, at the end of the day, we're all the same in what we're going through. And to have those parallels when you actually listen, you actually learn. And so not always your fix is having to share. Sometimes it is listening. And it helps both sides.
Yeah. I mean, I enjoy sharing my story, but I get so much out of, like you said, hearing these stories and learning from them and trying to put that into my life and then put it into others' lives when I'm speaking there. And it is really powerful just listening to people, and it's so enriching for yourself. Then you can put it out to anybody else that you have contact with, and it's a really beautiful way to just keep it spinning.
Makes you more diverse the more you learn and the more you understand. We don't know everything, we don't see everything. The world's way too big, and the more stories I hear, is the more perspective of, not to lessen my challenge, but even at the fact of going, oh, well, what I thought was this big, big deal was actually not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
And that it may affect me one quick moment, but it's not going to affect me forever. And so, yeah, no, it's definitely comforting, to hear that, or even the feeling, to feel others, as they, share those stories. very inspiring.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So beautiful. Yeah, man. Um, I'm going to use, you said big world, and I'm going to use that as a segue too. I ask everybody on this podcast, and you've traveled quite a bit. So I'll be interested to hear your answer to this one. If I came to you, and obviously COVID restrictions are not around at this point when I'm offering you this, if I came to you and I said, Nick, I have a plane ticket to anywhere in the world, where would you fly to?
Australia.
Okay.
Yeah. I love Australia. I need to go there more. I think maybe it was just because I was there once, but Australia just felt like home. It felt like people were nicer. Um, I don't know. It was a different environment. I'm intrigued to go back. It was 2010 when I went, and I was young, and so maybe things have changed by now. But no, Australia would be
Oh,
where I would want to go.
yeah, I feel the same way. The people I've met from Australia, I haven't been yet, but I feel
Yeah,
like I would feel that way. I just get such a good vibe from it, and like the people all around the world that I've met, because Australians travel a shit ton, which is
yeah.
so cool. You meet them everywhere. Um, so yeah, I would love to get over there and just dig in and
Now,
experience that.
now, I would say, like, if you were asking me to go on a vacation or somewhere I'd want to go, I most likely would not be going to one of those spots where, tourist traps are.
Right.
I would be going to places where, going to like I went to the Dominican Republic and a friend took me through the actual city, learning what it's like,
Yeah.
like like that's what I would want to do.
Right.
Um, but if you gave me a plane ticket and I was going to go somewhere and I had to be comfortable about staying there forever, Australia.
Sweet. In that same vein,
Yeah.
where in your travels is the most surprising place you've been?
Ooh, I would go back to Jamaica and the Dominican Republic. It was the first time that I saw poverty. Like,
Hmm.
you know, on my honeymoon was the first time, and that was going to Jamaica. Here you land, um, and then as you ride the taxi, and you're going to a spot that they've redone to make it comfortable for you being in America. And as you pass these different houses that are made of brick, not really a roof on them, windows don't actually have windows, like, wow, people live on the dirt and they're okay with that and they're happy with that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was one of those areas where I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
Yeah. My partner and I, we worked on some music cruises, and we ended up going to Jamaica as well. And it was so sad because like you pull into a port and there is what I call white Jamaica, because
Yeah.
it's walled off. You have your Starbucks, you have Jimmy Buffett restaurant, you have all this, and then like literally like nicely paved. Everything looks nice. It looks like somewhere in Charlotte, North Carolina, except you're on the beach somewhere. Then you walk and you go to the main street, and it is just crack. It looks like an earthquake hit 2 seconds prior to that, and it was staggering to see that. It was the first time I'd really been like old enough to see it and be like, wow, this is. And then hear a local man be like, all that money that comes in from that ship, we don't see it. And I was just like, ugh.
It kind of brings up one of those moments of like all these there's a lot of people who forget that they've how big the world is. We try to travel and say, oh, we've gone to these places, but a lot of these places have recreated what you see as home. And as soon as you challenge yourself to see those other areas, you realize how small you really are and how you need to adapt as opposed to they need to adapt. And it really that in itself as well is something that just you know challenges your brain to grow as you become a better person because you realize how much extra you have than others,
Yeah.
and then at the same time how challenging we make it when they are even happier. than we are
Yeah.
in those situations because that's all they know. And then you're
Right.
sitting there going, oh, well,
My
that's
internet doesn't work today.
right. It's like, wait, where is the key to happiness? And then that's
Right.
where, you lead back to, your heart and figuring that out. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it is. I mean, that's why I always encourage and I wish people from this country would travel far more and far different places than they do. But all right, brother, I have two last questions for you.
yeah.
First one is, what would you want the world to know about you?
Ooh, that's tough because I go right back to like the mission that I'm working on is that, I'm resilient, but at the same time, I wouldn't want them to know about me. I'd want them to have a message that they'd learn about themselves. Um, I never, I don't like to think of me. I like to think of how I can help others and how they would want to think of themselves when they leave. If there's, I mean, that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm just stuck in a like calculating looped. Like it's like yeah.
Well, I would say that you are very kind, you're very warm
Oh,
soul,
thank
you're
you.
very, very engaging, and you just have a really beautiful heart. So that's what I would say
Appreciate it.
as someone who
Yeah.
knows you.
Thank you. Well,
So
that's my
I'll
answer
answer.
then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I'll
I'll
answer for you.
I'll cheat on this quiz.
Deal. All right. Last question for you is, if you had the ear of everybody in the world, what would you say to them?
Never give up.
Yeah.
Keep going. One of the biggest things I've learned this last year that I myself am still trying to apply and calculate, but it makes total sense. And I've got a whole list of lessons that I could, share to connect this, but consistency. And that whole not giving up. So many people try to do things right, try to do things perfect. Um, but then at the same time, they don't make it to the second line when the person who's just literally just keeps going and is the one standing on the top of the mountain because he just literally kept going. He may be tripping the whole time or whatever, but it's the person that keeps going that, is usually the one that, comes through. And so, yeah, I would say keep going, never give up, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems so like cliche saying that, but it's so true though. Like it's weird.
Those old cliches are there for a reason. They've
True.
spanned the test of time because they're very good messages. And I mean, coupled with your story all the way through, it's not cliche. Like, if
Yeah.
everyone's listened to this moment and now have heard you say never give up, they will fully understand. Maybe if it was just like you and I,
True.
like, hey Nick, what would you say to the world? Like,
Ooh,
then you're like, oh cool, never give up, and they're like, who's this guy? Like, but coupled with your story, it is incredibly powerful.
thank you.
Yeah, man. So when everybody's gotten through listening to this and they
Yeah.
want to connect with you, how do they connect with you?
Perfect. Our website, chooseyouratitude.com. Super simple to remember, chooseyouratitude.com. The social medias for Facebook and all the others is Choose Attitude, Create Life. So basically, just like Choose Your Attitude, Create Your Life, but it's Choose Attitude, Create Life for socials. And then the website is chooseyouratitude.com. Yeah, it's
Awesome.
we've got apparel there. I've got my book, and we're starting to bring that Create Your Life resources, and podcast is there as well, YouTube channel. So yeah, definitely appreciate it.
Perfect. Well, dude, it's fantastic to see you and chat with you
Likewise.
again, but I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation and I appreciate your time, brother.
I appreciate it as well. It's been a pleasure. Thank you. I look forward to more.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. See you.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Beautifully Human podcast. To hear more beautiful stories from beautiful humans, follow us on Spotify and rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at the Beautifully Human Podcast. Peace signs up.